Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
You're watching.
We're watching. You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy. Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot. I assume Tom.
Kevin Tancharoen, I am going to tell you something out of pure jealousy. I love and hate you at the same time. That's it. Just love and hate you at the same time. You in the Brother Son, which is coming to Netflix, you have made me laugh nowhere near as hard as I have since Kung Fu Hustle.
Oh, wow. That is a massive compliment. Wow, that is so great. That is one of my favorite movies ever. So that's fantastic.
Yes. So that is where the hate comes in, is that your level of talent in being one of the executive producers on this and one of the directors on this series, for out of 8 episodes, you directed 4 or 5, I believe.
Yeah.
And
I did 5 of them. Yeah.
Five of the 8. And of course I was going to say, oh, you got to work with Ron Yoon. And those are probably the 3 episodes you didn't work with, because that'll just be my luck in complimenting Ron.
Oh, no, I worked with Ron quite a bit on the show. He's great, man. It's I've been wanting to work with him for so long, and I got him to do a little freestyle dancing in this show, which was like a last minute addition. But he's great.
Ron is phenomenal. You work with Michelle, who doesn't even need a last name at this point.
No, you know who she is. She's first name person.
Yeah, at this point, absolutely. Who I've been admiring for God knows how many years. Like, your life is absolutely beautiful right now.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I couldn't believe this project came around, because it felt like everything I've ever wanted to do in like the weirdest way possible. It's like it had every element of this specific genre that I loved. Like, not only is there cool music, the cool fighting, there's comedy in it, but at its core, it's like a really solid family story. And that's ultimately what makes the whole thing work, is that, like, that has to be first. The mom and her 2 sons have to work really, and then all the fun stuff that's around it is what makes it great. Like in Kung Fu Hustle, like, if the relationship between the 2 best friends wasn't solid, I'm not sure it would be as fun. You know, it's like, and you also wanted to feel the connection in that movie with the villager, like all of the people that lived in that village. Like, you can tell their relationship, and that's why it was so good, because you actually gave a shit if they saved that little village all of a sudden, or if his best friend made it out alive. So when this came across, I was like, oh my God, it has all the elements that I love of Tarantino and Stephen Chow and Edgar Wright, and it was great. And then we added food into the element, into the mix there, and it made everything even cooler.
And then you have Samsung Lee. Is it Lee or Lai?
Lee.
Okay, I want to make sure I get Sam's name right, because he has this very Sonny Corleone aspect to him. You know, I'm sorry, Michael Corleone aspect to him. We got to get the Godfather reference right, where he's not necessarily in the scene and he doesn't want to be a part of it, but he gets pulled in kicking and screaming.
He gets pulled in kicking and screaming, and he's not bad at it. I mean, you know, that's the thing. Sometimes it takes an outside point of view that has not lived this life in order to think outside of the box. And that's exactly what he does. So you're right. It's a very good correlation with Michael, because he never wanted to be a part of it, but it turns out he has a little bit of a knack for it, even if he is reluctant. So I'll be very curious to see how that plays out if we're lucky enough to do more seasons.
You know what? With what you guys pulled off in 8 episodes, I can only imagine a minimum of 2 more seasons at this point.
Oh, great. I hope so. That would be great. I mean, these characters are so fun. And I will say, genuinely, everyone had a really good time making the show too. Like, everyone was great. I mean, Sam and Justin working together were great. Like, they were actually like brothers in real life. So that we got really lucky with their chemistry. And the 3 of them all got along so well between Michelle, Justin, and Sam, that it was you kind of had to point the cameras and let them banter, basically. And they did a great job.
And this is Justin's first TV series, correct? Like, you've introduced Justin Chien to the world.
Yeah, like, this was his big breakout role. He's been in other things, but this is like, he's owning it, you know, and he really went the extra mile in dedicating his not only his brain, but his freaking like body to this whole entire project because he trained nonstop. Like there wasn't a moment he wasn't either like in the gym or doing fight rehearsal. We as producers actually had to tell him to calm down because we didn't want him to injure himself before we even shot. So, but he took on the Keanu Reeves training as much as he possibly could, and he did a great job.
You know, when you get presented something like this, like Byron Wu is one of the co-creators, and you're like, all right, we need an executive producer and we need a director for this. Going through the scripts that they've come up with, or at least the story arc that they were showing you what they wanted, like, were you on board instantaneously, or was there like a moment where you're like, if we get the right cast, I'm totally in?
No, instantly, it was actually the first scene that hooked me. Like when I read it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like there hasn't been one word spoken in the first, I don't know, 5 pages. And it's about a guy baking a cake and assassins come in. And just the way it was written, I knew that there was something special there. And just the juxtaposition of him baking a cake into murdering a group of people, but being upset that his cake was burned was kind of everything that I needed to know immediately. And then as the scenes progressed, that tone just kept going, and all of the nuanced, kind of like subconscious moments that I related to really shined. So it was a mix of all of the genres that I particularly love, and a project like that never really comes around. Like, how often am I able to say, like, oh my God, I feel like tonally this is Barry meets Kill Bill and Kung Fu Hustle. Like, never will I ever get something like that. So I was very excited to keep reading. And the more I got into it, the more I was like, oh my God, this is also a love letter to the San Gabriel Valley, which also doesn't get paid attention to a lot. And I've been wanting to tell a story within that setting because I wanted that background to feel like a character. In the way that like Albuquerque was a character for Breaking Bad, the San Gabriel Valley had to be a character in this story because there's so much culture and authenticity and a big community out there that is not often shown, especially in like genre material.
Look, I get it. You're selling the San Gabriel Valley. You just wanted to be home at night.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these, because you know what? I got to say, like after filming in Vancouver and Atlanta and Nashville, and I got to say, like being at home was nice, but it was also kind of important for the story. So we got a little bit of both. I got my wish to stay at home, and we also told the story correctly.
You know, sometimes when there are certain shows that you'll watch, and I love Netflix, and they take care of me, and they've always been great to me. Sometimes you'll see a movie, and you're like, that should be a TV series. Sometimes you'll see a series, and you're like, that could have been done in a movie. And then
Agreed.
we get a series like The Brother's Son, and you're just like, why is it only 8 episodes?
Well, hopefully there'll be more. You know, we always want to do more, and this was just a little bit of the story. Like now this was basically background, right? Now you can like see where the Sun family goes from here, because what's the classic saying? More money, more problems, more power, more issues. And this is exactly what's going to happen to the Sun family, right? Now that they've made it there, now what? So I'm very interested and hopeful that we'll be able to continue those stories, because I'm very curious, like what is Bruce's character going to turn into? What is Charles's character going to turn into? And what does TK turn into? Now that he's kind of has all this, he's got all the things that he wants, like he's in this world, he's important. What's going to happen? So, but we really needed season 1 to set up where they all came from and to show where all their allegiances lie and just who they are as humans, so that we understand the choices they make later, whether they be good or bad. So, yeah, I hope we get to keep doing it, because season 1 was great, but we wanted to tell more.
And at some point you could do a whole Godfather 2 thing where you go back to Taiwan and start the entire lineage of how they came about and came to the United States, same way they did in Italy with that one.
That's right. You know, at one point we had contemplated shooting a scene about when Mama's son like literally took her son and moved to LA, just to show them as children and see how they bonded when they were younger. And you know, you can only tell so many stories or so much story within 8 episodes, so we had to really pick and choose what was the best. But like you said, you know, you can't do one-off episodes in success in other seasons that are like just about this one thing. And I think that we would be able to take those risks and like even it'd be fun to tell a story on how Mama Son and Big Son met in the first place. And I've always found that it's so great to humanize your villains and figure out why they are the person they are and understand why they became that person, because more often than not, it's understandable. And that makes the most interesting bad guy. So I would be really curious to see like more backstory at some point.
Now, Kevin, I want to ask this. Are you first generation American like myself?
Yeah, I was born and raised in LA. My parents are from Thailand. And yeah, first gen Thai American, me and my sister. Not a big Thai community in LA, but the small community that we have is pretty tight. And yeah, so I was very lucky that I got to also do Thai Cape Rescue right before this, and I got to spend some time in Thailand, which was awesome. And on this story, I got to tell like an Asian American story, which is like my story because I was born and raised in Van Nuys.
You know, what I appreciate with stories like this, especially yourself and myself being both, you know, like I fall under what I think they started calling a SWAN, a Southwest Asian North African. Right?
Southwest Asian North
It's basically
African.
all of Western Asia is the Middle East, and then North Africa, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we forgot you guys are on the continent too." And I'm like, "Well, where did the South come from if we're the entire western part of the continent?" But yeah.
That's okay. So you're first gen too.
Yeah, so I'm first gen too. So it's always fun when you see the parent immigrant story trying to like assimilate into America and the kids finding the balance as well. So I'm always entertained by those stories because I lived that myself, as did you. And it's always this dichotomy of the parents trying to hold on to the roots while becoming Americanized, and the kids being a little too American, still trying to hold on. So I just love the way that aspect plays out.
And you just nailed it right there, right? Like, and there are so many people with that story here in America. So it's really great to use this as a way to explore those confusing moments of our adolescence, because like coming of age and trying to figure out what your identity is with that on top of it just makes it a little way more confusing because you're just not really sure which one you need to invest it all in. Like, which identity am I supposed to is going to make everyone happy? And the truth is, there's not one that's going to make everyone happy. You just got to figure that out for yourself eventually. But that comes with age and trauma and teenage angst. And so like all of that kind of stuff, I think is fun to explore in comedy, you know? So because it allows us to access those moments in time, but with some humor. And I think that's always the best way to attack those types of, that type of content, is because if you can laugh through the trauma, it's just very therapeutic. And, you know, so I think that was a lot of it for me, and a lot of it for a lot of the other voices that worked on the show that wanted to bring their authenticity to it, because there are a lot of shared experiences that we had growing up. And so it was great to kind of realize that there was a shared experience amongst other people as well. And hopefully the show kind of waves at those people who also have a very similar experience.
And that's what's fun about it. And then on top of it, you throw in the mafia and you throw assassins. And like you said, that opening scene with, you know, being upset that they didn't have to kill people, but that the cake is ruined and that 3 hours is lost on baking this thing. You know, you could see someone with that mentality, like literally go to that.
Exactly. And, you know, when it comes to him, like it's always about, you know, with Justin, our actor, he's a very, very well-trained and he takes the craft very seriously. So when we were talking about that specific scene, it was like, why am I so angry about this cake? And he got it instantly. It was like, well, everything everything else in his life is not in his control at all. So with baking, there's like a therapeutic nature to baking, or like doing Legos, right? Because you're listening to a direction and you're following that direction and you're just doing it step by step. It's almost like you kind of can tune out. So for him, that's what it is. It's control. It's just that he can control this one thing about his life, and then he can eat it. And then if that gets messed up from his everyday life, it just makes him even more frustrated. So making sure that that was within all of that was important to the character. And it could even just be a subtle thing that he has in his head, but it's something that we wanted to make sure comes across. And that was one of the biggest things for me, was that opening scene. I was like, oh wow, they were able to kind of tell me so much about this character without saying one word, and it was within action. I was like, that's great. If you can do that, that's really phenomenal.
In working with Netflix also, they give the creators leeway to tell the story. It's not like network where we need 32 minutes only, or I'm sorry, 22 minutes only, or 42 minutes only to fill the hour with advertising. You can go 35 minutes, you can go an hour and 4 minutes, or whatever it is.
That's right. It kind of depends on what the best for the story.
Right. How freeing is that as a creator as well, to where it's like, I just needed those extra 3 minutes and it added something that I didn't have to cut to try to fit into this time frame?
It's very freeing because you're not racing to the finish line to tell too much or to only tell plot and exposition, right? I think a lot of times when you're running up against network schedules, you have to rush to get your information out, which means there's not a lot of room for nuance or a breath, a moment of pause. It's just word after word after word after word. And sometimes there's a time and place for that, and it works very well. But I think for this particular story, so many moments live in the silence. So it was very freeing to be able to say, oh, we can allow this shot to breathe a little bit and sit with him and watch him process the information, as opposed to just having to cut right out of it, So that was really cool, to have episodes that are a little bit shorter, some that are a little bit longer, and just do what is correct for the story. That's the dream, right? It's like to be able to just not be confined to a time.
I'm going to ask you the one question I ask every other first-generation American like myself. What type of engineering master's degree did you have to get before your parents let you go into film?
Oh, that's so fun. You know what? I got really lucky is that, and I've talked about this quite often, because as far as my Asian parents are concerned, like, everyone was like, I can't believe they let you go into the arts, because I actually went on tour when I was 15. I started in the music world as a choreographer and a backup dancer. And luckily enough, my parents are both understand the arts. My mom is an artist. My dad was a transportation coordinator. He's retired now. So it was somewhat of a family business, but trust me, like, it was challenging at first to figure out, like, oh my God, am I going to just put all my chips in here? And when you're younger, you don't think about those things. And luckily enough, I had parents who really understood it and pushed me. But it is something that I talk about quite often, because, like, it's very rare.
Yeah, because everybody I know had to have a master's degree first, like myself included, had to get that master's degree first before going into that other venture.
That's so. I think my sister is the one who ended up getting. She's the one who got all the academics. Like, she graduated college and has all the accolades, and I ended up having to go on the road when I was younger. So I think she ended up getting a lot of the academics out of the way for me, for the younger brother.
Is there, you mentioned choreography, and I wanted to bring that up as well with the series. Is there a moment where, as the director, you have to put yourself aside and let the choreographer that you hired work on the gunfight scenes and then the martial arts scenes as well? Or is there a moment where, like, hey, when we did dance and we did these certain moves, this could be incorporated over here to emulate martial arts without somebody getting hurt?
I love collaborating. That's just the style that I've always loved. I believe in, if you hire the right people, you should definitely trust them. So I hired somebody that I worked with already, named Justin Yeoh, and already knew that him and I have very similar taste, and I knew how to work with him. And we have very similar approaches to action sequences. So I had no problem letting him kind of take control of the stunt sequences when we had to, because it was all coming from the right place, and we always had a lot of detailed talks up front. And he's super talented. Like, Justin Yeoh is a very good choreographer, coordinator. His team is great. and they're super professional. So like him and I got along very well. I really like making sure that we're all on the same page first, and then people can start to create, and then we all go back and forth. But I do think it's very important for everyone to feel like they're creatively invested, especially if you're working with a group of professionals that you trust. So we were very lucky to get him because he's very busy, and somehow I convinced him to stay in LA and do the show.
Well, you guys pulled off something that's absolutely incredible. And like I said, I love and hate you because you've made me laugh. I haven't laughed this hard since Kung Fu Hustle.
So
And,
good.
like, the only thing you need to do now is like an Americanized version of Shaolin soccer.
Oh,
And we'll be all squared away.
you know what I'm shocked they haven't done yet, because I do feel like, because it's being anime right now, is how have they not done like the Shaolin soccer of basketball? Like, have you ever seen an anime basketball scene? They're so incredible and over the top, but so fun. It's like 300, but basketball. Like, I'm so shocked that no one's like, how is like Michael B. Jordan not pitched that yet? Because I know he's a big anime guy, right? Like, so there's got to be a sports movie that's going to be done in that style. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad that's a great reference and it's a great comparison. So I'm very lucky that you even put the two together.
Yeah, well, you've done some incredible work just with this series, and we're not even talking about what you did with Arrow and what you did with some of the DC properties for the CW, and that mentions going back to Canada. When you get to do something a little closer to home in this regard, I know you're Thai and it's a Taiwanese family, but the immigrant story, the first generation American story, like how it resonates with me, even though I'm from the other side of the continent, like, when it's closer to home and you can still laugh at it and then add the absurdity of the dark comedy with, the mafia on top of it, like, how much more fun is it to play with that?
It's a lot more fun because, obviously there's a place where working on the superhero stuff and like Mortal Kombat and all that stuff, it's like I'm a little kid again and I'm just playing with action figures, and that is always the dream, right? But when it comes to telling stuff that has a little bit more familiarity in your life, there's just more of a rewarding part of it at the end. Because now it's taking a part of your life, recognizing it, understanding the value, the good and bad values of that moment in time, and then being able to turn it into something that might potentially inspire someone else. Is like, I know that's such an artsy hippie, but it's like there is something about that part of the process, that something that comes from a real authentic place to be presented as entertainment to somebody and then let someone else watch it and maybe get a little bit of comfort from it. There's something really magical about that. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I will say, like, because it's a real world situation, and yes, the world that they occupy is a lot larger than life. Then, like, listen, I'm not in a gangster family, nor am I trying to fight for my life when it comes to the mafia. But there are also a lot of familiarities in the awkwardness of just growing up in the story. And if you can recognize that as yourself, as an audience member, I think there's something very comforting about that. So I think just the impact is a lot more significant in its own way. So it's more rewarding.
All right. I'm going to ask you, this is the final question regarding to being first gen, because it just popped in my head, and you're the first person I'm ever going to ask this question to.
Okay.
So your mom was in the same industry that you're in when it comes to entertainment, or at least similarly.
Yeah, she's an artist, meaning like she's always been, she used to dance, she paints, she draws. Like, she's the reason why I was introduced into any sort of art form.
You get to cast your mom now as a background dancer or as something. What does that look like for you? Does like 6-year-old Kevin become gleeful because now he gets to yell at his mom and not get in trouble?
No, I would love more than anything to have her come and like play a role, because you know what? Actually, Justin Chien's mother and Byron Wu's mom, they have roles in the show at the Mahjong table. And I would have loved to have my mom be a part of that, but I think that she's a little too camera shy to come on. But I had her come and visit the set and say hi to everybody. But one day, I'm pretty sure I can convince her to at least just walk in the background with me and act scared or something. So because that would just be a bucket list thing. That would be really fun.
Well, that would be phenomenal. We got to remind everybody, The Brother's Son launches on January 4th on Netflix, and this is one of those Netflix shows that you do want to sit all 8 episodes through, which also drives me nuts that I'm like, okay, I can only watch like 2 episodes now, and then you go into the third one, and you're like, I'm still here for the third one. Like, I got things to do. So
Yeah.
Congratulations for you to even incorporating that into it and making us sit longer.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm glad you really liked it, and I hope everyone does too. So, but thanks for taking the time to chat with me about all this.
Absolutely. Kevin, where can we find you on social media if we want to connect with you?
On both X and Instagram, it's just at KTanch. So KTANCH.
Kevin, man, hopefully you will let me do a set visit for season 2 since I'm in Orange County and LA is not that far away.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to come down.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. Listen, enjoy the holidays. And January 4th, The Brother's Son is coming to Netflix. You'll sit through all 8 hours of this because it's just that good.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.